Are you using GA4 and you've been hearing all about events but don't know exactly what they are? In this video, we're going to cover the 3 types of events, exactly what they are, and exactly why you need to be using them to measure and optimize your website. Events are the building blocks of GA4. All of our reports, along with their dimensions and metrics, are created using events. So tracking the right events in Google Analytics means you'll have the best possible data available when you want to check the performance of your marketing and tweak your website to increase conversions and engagement. We're going to start by looking at the events report in GA4, so let's head to Google Analytics. We're looking at the home report in my GA4 demo property. As we just touched on, all of our reports are created using events, and at the top of this report, we can see we have the event count metric. This shows us the total number of events that we've collected. The other metrics are based on these events. For example, the conversions metric is simply showing us the number of events that have been configured as a conversion action in Google Analytics. Okay, now let's select Reports. Then Engagement, and then Events. This is the default events report and it shows us all of the events that we've collected for the date range. We can see all of our events in the table. We have the page view event, which is collected every time someone views a page on our website. There is the session start event when someone begins looking at our website, and all of the different events. Traveling to the right, we can see the number of times we've collected each of these events. This is the event count metric. Events are used to track actions and collect information in your reports. The page view and session start events we're looking at are tracked automatically when we install Google Analytics on our website. But you can use events to track just about anything you like. Here are some examples of what we can track with events. We can track the pages people view on our website, the actions people perform within a page, the different links and elements people click, information from the URL of the page, the transactions and products people view and purchase, elements that are visible in the browser like particular promotional banners, and other details we've collected about someone on our website. Okay, so events let us track all types of things in GA4. Before we talk about the 3 types of events, we need to cover one more important concept, which is parameters. Parameters are used to send extra information with our events. For example, the page view event is sent to your reports with the page location and page referrer parameters. The page location parameter lets you see the URL of the page that someone has viewed, and the page referrer parameter lets you see the URL of the previous page they viewed. Let's head back to Google Analytics to take a look at parameters. To take a look at parameters, we're going to use the debug view. This is a super helpful report for testing our tracking in Google Analytics. To find the debug view, let's navigate to Admin. Then we need to look for the property column in the middle. Scroll down and select Debug View. The debug view lets us see events while we're testing our implementation. Since we're not testing anything, we can see it says it's waiting for debug events. So let's open Tag Assistant. You can open Tag Assistant by navigating to tagassistant.google.com. Or if you're using Google Tag Manager, you can click the Preview button to load Tag Assistant. Now we just need to enter the URL of our website. And click Connect. A new window opens with our website. We can then browse our website, perform other actions, and we can then open the Tag Assistant tab to see all of the events that have been sent to Google Analytics. And since we're using Tag Assistant to send events to Google Analytics, it also means they'll appear in the debug view. So let's head back to Google Analytics. Now we can see the events that have come through. Let's select one of the events. This lets us see all of the parameters that have been sent with the event. And selecting a parameter lets us see the value or information assigned to it. Again, parameters are used to send extra information with our events, and Google Analytics automatically sends a number of parameters with each event we track. These parameters can include the GA session ID parameter, which includes the unique identifier assigned by Google Analytics for the user's session. The page location parameter, which sends the URL of the page currently being viewed. The page title parameter, which sends the title of the page currently being viewed. The page referrer parameter, which sends the URL that someone viewed before the current page. This can include other pages on your website or third-party websites if someone clicked through to your website from another website. And additional parameters can also be sent for events that are automatically tracked by Google Analytics. Okay, now that we've covered the basics and we've covered parameters, it's time to talk about the different types of events we can track in GA4. There are 3 types of events we can find in Google Analytics. These are automatic events, which, as the name suggests, are automatically tracked in GA4. But as we'll see in a moment, we can turn most of these automatic events on or off. Recommended events, which is a list of events Google suggests we consider implementing on our website. And custom events, which is where we send any events we like to GA4. Let's start with automatic events, but we'll also cover recommended and custom events in a moment. When we install the GA4 tag, it will automatically track a number of events when someone visits your website. For example, Google Analytics will automatically track an event when someone spends at least 10 seconds on your website. Events that are tracked automatically include the first visit event, which is collected the first time someone visits your website. This event is also used to calculate the new user's metric in your reports. The page view event, which is used to report on the page the user is viewing. The session start event, which is used to determine when the user's session started. A new session start event is triggered when there is a period of inactivity of 30 minutes. The user engagement event, which can be collected periodically and is used to report when someone has spent at least 10 seconds on your website. These automatic events can't be switched off or disabled. They are the critical components needed for Google Analytics, so you'll find them in all Google Analytics 4 properties. Next, we have enhanced measurement. Apart from the automatic events we just covered, we can use the enhanced measurement feature to collect additional events automatically. Enhanced measurement is configured for each data stream in GA4. The best way to think about enhanced measurement is that it lets you track optional automatic events. So with enhanced measurement, you can choose to turn particular automatic events on or off depending on what you would like to see in your reports. Enhanced measurement lets you automatically track the following actions. Scrolls, for people scrolling at least 90% of a page. Outbound clicks from your website to other websites. Site search, for the keywords entered into your website search function. Form interactions, when people start completing a form on your website and when they submit the form. Video engagement of people watching embedded YouTube videos. And file downloads, for people downloading files from your website. Okay, let's head back to Google Analytics to take a look. We're still looking at the debug view, so let's click back. Since we're still in the admin area of Google Analytics, we can select Data Streams, and let's open the data stream. We can see details for the data stream at the top, and then below this we can see that enhanced measurement is enabled. Let's select the configuration icon. We can then turn any of the enhanced measurement events on or off in the interface. They'll be set to on by default, but if there are events you don't want to track, you can disable them. Enhanced measurement also provides advanced settings for the automatically collected page view events and site search events. For page views, you can disable the page changes based on browser history events option. By default, this option will automatically track page views when the URL of the page changes without the page reloading, or if content is loaded into an existing page without the page reloading. For example, if JavaScript is used to include additional content on a page, it's looking for history events in the browser. The other option you can adjust in enhanced measurement is the configuration for the site search event. Apart from the default query parameters, you can also adjust the query parameters Google Analytics uses to identify the keywords people are using to search within your website. And you also have the option of adding additional query parameters to collect further insights. For example, if your search function lets people refine their search by choosing a search category, you could add this to the additional query parameters. When it comes to enhanced measurement, the main thing to check is that you're not doubling up on any actions. For example, if you're already tracking forms using Google Tag Manager, you need to ensure that form interactions is set to off. Otherwise, you will be sending multiple events for the same action. So automatic events, including enhanced measurement, is the first type of event you'll find in Google Analytics. Next are recommended events. Recommended events are a list of events and parameters that are provided by Google. They're a starting point for important actions you should consider tracking in GA4. Let's head to Google's Analytics help article to take a look. I've included a link to this help article in the description below this video. Scrolling down, we can see the recommended event names on the left and when we should trigger the event on the right. And the recommended events are listed under For All Properties, For Online Sales, and For Games. Let's look at the events listed for online sales. We can see Generate Lead included in the list of recommended events. However, we don't need to be running an e-commerce website for this event to be useful. Any website aiming to capture leads should be using this event to report on the number of people entering their contact details. Each of the recommended event names is linked, so you can click on any of these to see the suggested parameters to send with the event. Let's click Generate Lead. We can then see Google suggests sending the currency and value parameters with the event. Sending these parameters would let us report on the dollar value for each of our leads. You can use any of the recommended events if they're appropriate for your website and business. My top picks from the list of recommended events include the Select Content event for tracking actions within a page, the Select Promotions event for tracking the number of times a special offer was clicked, the View Promotion event to understand the number of impressions of a special offer, the Generate Lead event to track the number of leads you've captured, the View Item event to understand when people view particular products, the Add to Cart event to track people adding items to their shopping cart, the Purchase event for successful e-commerce transactions. Unlike the automatic events we covered previously, you will need to set up the recommended events in GA4. This means they're not tracked automatically, and in most cases, I suggest using Google Tag Manager to implement them on your website. If you would like to learn more about implementing recommended events on your website, I've included a link to my click button and form tracking tutorial in the description below this video. The final type of event is custom events. You can use custom events to send any events you like to GA4. It really means you can name your event anything you like. Before creating custom events, I suggest reviewing the events that are automatically tracked, including enhanced measurement, and checking the list of recommended events. If these don't cover what you're aiming to track, you can then set up a custom event. You should aim for a consistent naming convention, and ideally it should follow Google's recommended event names. This will help keep things clear and logical in your reports. For example, you might let people rate products on your website. You could then create a new event named Product-Rating that collects people's rating selections. Although you can name your events anything you like, it's probably better to follow Google's naming convention. If we look at the recommended events, we'll see the naming convention for products include view_item and select_item. So we see the action or behavior is used first, followed by an underscore, then item. This doesn't quite align with our custom event of product-rating. Instead, we should probably consider a custom event with the name of rate_item to follow a similar naming convention to other events that are already available in our reports. You can follow a similar approach for any parameters you send with your custom event. For example, we would use recommended parameters like items and item_ID and a custom parameter rating or similar for the actual rating people selected. This means we'd send the following events to Google Analytics for someone who rated a product 5 out of 5. And if you want to see the event parameters in your reports, you'll also need to register them as custom dimensions or metrics. Now that we've covered the 3 types of events, which are automatic, recommended, and custom events, it's time to look at how we can track recommended events and custom events in Google Analytics. There are 3 ways you can do this. You can create a new event directly inside GA4, you can send a new event using Google Tag Manager, or you can modify the Google tag. In this video, we're going to look at the first 2 options. Let's start by looking at the first option, which is to create a new event based on an existing event inside GA4. This option means we create a condition and then fire a new event when our conditions are met. For example, if we want to track an event for people viewing a specific thank you page on our website, we can do this by triggering a new event using the existing page view event. Let's head to Google Analytics to see how we can do this. We begin by navigating to Admin. Then we select Events in the Property column. This is a bit like the events report we looked at earlier, as it shows us all the events we've tracked into GA4. To create a new event in GA4, you will need editor or administrator permission for the property. Since I do have the correct level of permission in this property, we can see there are buttons at the top to modify and create events. So let's select Create Event. Then let's click Create. Now we can name our new event. I'm going to name this event Generate_lead. We can then enter the conditions for our new event. This tells Google Analytics when to trigger our new event. For this event, let's ensure event name is set for the parameter. Then equals, and let's enter page_view as the value. This condition means our new event will only fire based on existing page view events. Now let's add another condition. And let's enter page location as the parameter. Then contains. And then I'm going to enter thank-u as the value. This will mean our new event will be tracked whenever someone views a page on our website that has a URL containing thank-u. When you're happy, you can create your new event. And apart from creating new events in the interface, you can also modify existing incoming events too. For example, if you want to change the value of a parameter to clean up your reports. If you're not able to base your new event on one already being sent to Google Analytics, you can create new event tags in Google Tag Manager. This lets you send new events for just about any action taking place on your website. Let's head to Google Tag Manager to take a look. Okay, let's say we want to track people selecting a promotional offer on our website. To do this, we're going to create a new event tag. Let's create a new tag. And let's name the tag Google Analytics GA4 Promotion. Let's select GA4 Event as the tag type. Then we need to select our existing GA4 configuration tag. If you're just getting started with Google Tag Manager, then you won't have a GA4 configuration tag yet. If this is the case for you, then I've included a link to my dedicated GTM tutorial in the description below this video. Once we've selected our GA4 configuration tag, we can name our event. Let's name this event Select_Promotion. And let's select Event Parameters. And add a row. Let's name the parameter promotion_ID, and let's click the variable icon and choose Click Classes. This will automatically send the CSS class for our promotional element as the value of the parameter. Now let's add another row and enter location_ID as the name. And let's click the variable icon again and choose Click URL. This will send the URL of our promotional element for the parameter. Now we just need to add a trigger to fire our tag when the promotion is clicked. We can then save the tag and publish the changes when you're ready. Again, if you'd like to learn more about creating these types of tags in GTM, I've included links to my extra resources in the description below this video. Now that you understand events in GA4, the next step is to review your enhanced measurement settings and decide what recommended and custom events to implement on your website. Make sure the events that you track align with your business objectives. What events are you going to use in GA4? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments below. And apart from events, there's even more to learn about GA4. So make sure you subscribe to this channel to see new tutorials on Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. Understanding your audience and how they use your website will take your business to the next level. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.